Later tonight, once the sun is gone, you'll reach over and press a switch. The room will fill with light, and the moment won't even register. Yet across 99.9% of our time as a species, that switch simply wasn't there. Once the sun dropped below the horizon, everything turned black. You literally couldn't make out your own fingers an inch from your eyes. And almost no living human has ever truly felt that. For more than 300,000 years, every ancestor you've ever had spent close to half their existence sitting in near-complete darkness. For most of that stretch, candles weren't even an option. There was only the dark sky, the scattered stars, and whatever flame they managed to protect. So how did they fill all those hours? The answer rewrites what we assume about rest, about stories, and about being human at all. Begin with fire, because without it, none of the rest could have happened. The oldest convincing proof that humans tamed fire was found in Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dating back around 1 million years. But fire did far more than warm a body. Fire rebuilt the entire shape of the human day. Until then, our ancestors behaved like any other primate. The instant the sun vanished, you scrambled up a tree or tucked into some shelter and froze in place. To move after dark was to volunteer as prey. Human eyes are nearly useless at night next to the hunters stalking us. Leopards, hyenas, and wolves all saw perfectly well. Fire flipped that balance in a single night. I mean that literally. A fire throws out a ring of protection about 30 feet across. Step inside it and the predators stay away. Step beyond it, and you're finished. That's not dramatic exaggeration. Researchers watching present-day hunter-gatherer communities have recorded that anyone drifting away from the fire after dark faces a far higher chance of being taken by a predator. Still true now. But here's the fascinating turn. Fire didn't only shield people through the night. It handed them something they had never possessed: spare hours. Sit with that for a second. Before fire, your productive day simply stopped at sunset. Call it 12 hours in summer, maybe only 8 deep in winter. Fire instantly tacked 2 to 4 usable hours onto every day. And across thousands of generations, those borrowed hours reshaped who we are. Back in 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner released a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. She'd spent years capturing the conversations of the Ju-Huansi Bushmen of the Kalahari, one of the last peoples on Earth still living something near the original human pattern. Her findings were remarkable. By daylight, roughly 80% of talk was practical. Where the hunting was good, which plants had ripened, grievances, day-to-day planning, bargaining and trade. Daytime words were labor. But after dark, gathered by the fire, the whole tone of conversation shifted. At night, 81% of what people said took the form of stories. Accounts of others in faraway lands, adventures, legends about how the world began, jokes that set the whole camp laughing. Wiesner made the case that fireside talk is the birthplace of human culture. The fire was our first theater, our first schoolroom, our first temple. It's where people first learned to reach past the here and now and picture things that don't yet exist. It's where we turned into us. But the nighttime wasn't only fireside tales. Something else was unfolding too. Something science only stumbled back onto within the last 3 decades. You were never built to sleep the way you sleep tonight. In 2001, historian Roger E. Kirch put out a paper that reshaped the science of sleep. After 16 years buried in old records, he uncovered something no one anticipated. More than 500 mentions stretched across centuries, prayer books from the 1400s, court documents, personal diaries, medical writings, letters from everyday people, even lines in Homer's Odyssey. Everyone pointed to the same thing: a first sleep and a second sleep. Before industry took over, people didn't sleep in one unbroken stretch. They lay down soon after sundown, slept around 4 hours, and then stirred awake. They stayed up for 1 to 2 hours in the dead of night. Then they returned to sleep for another 4 hours until daybreak. This wasn't insomnia. This was simply normal. This is how every person alive slept for thousands of years. So what filled that awake stretch in the middle of the night? Just about everything. A French physician in the 1500s actually advised couples to conceive during this window, convinced the results would be better. People dropped in on neighbors and made sense of dreams while they were still vivid. They wrote. They just lay quietly in the dark and let their minds wander. A medical guide from the 1500s told patients the finest hours for study and reflection came during what they called the watch. Those still moments between first and second sleep, when the mind was settled and the world held its breath. For ages, historians read these passages but kept rendering first sleep as something else, unable to picture people ever sleeping differently than we do. That blind spot ran so deep that translators genuinely mistranslated ancient Greek and medieval Latin to bend it toward their own habits. Then science backed up what the records had been saying all along. In 1992, psychiatrist Thomas Wehr at the National Institute of Mental Health set up an experiment. He gathered volunteers and stripped every trace of artificial light from their nights. For a full month they lived with 14 hours of darkness each night, much like our ancestors did before fire stretched the evening. Within a few weeks, every last participant slid into the very same rhythm. 4 hours of sleep, 1 to 3 hours of calm wakefulness, then 4 more hours of sleep. No one instructed them. No one even hinted at it. Their bodies simply did it, as though some ancient blueprint had been lying dormant inside them, buried beneath centuries of electric light. Wehr also tracked their hormones during that wakeful gap and found something striking. The volunteers were in a state unlike ordinary wakefulness. Their brains were pumping out high levels of prolactin, the same hormone that surges during meditation and after orgasm. They reported feeling calm, reflective, almost meditative. It wasn't merely a pause in sleep, it was a distinct mode of consciousness, one most people today have never tasted. So what wiped it out? The reason is simpler than you'd guess. Light. In the 1600s, cities started putting up street lamps. Paris led the way under Louis XIV, who wanted less crime. London came next. The night, long a realm of dread and danger, slowly grew passable. Then cheaper candles arrived, then gas lamps through the 1800s. Then in 1879, Thomas Edison brought the electric bulb to market. And inside a single generation, the night humanity had known for 300,000 years vanished. And here's the piece nobody mentions. The word curfew traces back to the French couvre-feu. It literally translates to cover the fire. In medieval towns, a bell rang each night telling everyone to smother or put out their flames, not for safety, but because night was meant to stay dark. Night was for sleeping. Night was when you were exposed. Through most of history, being out after dark drew suspicion. In plenty of medieval European cities, stepping outside at night without a lantern was flat out illegal. The night belonged to criminals and to the supernatural. People dreaded it in a way that's almost unthinkable to us now. And then we defeated it. We drowned it in light. And we called that progress. But look at what slipped away. The average person today sits under artificial light for 7 to 8 hours after the sun goes down. That light, the blue glow of screens above all, shuts down your body's supply of melatonin, the hormone that steers your sleep. Your body can't tell a bulb apart from the sun. When light strikes your retina at 11 at night, Your brain reads it as daytime. It pushes back the melatonin. It breaks your sleep into pieces. It throws off the circadian rhythm that took millions of years to form. Studies show that people who camp for a single week with zero artificial light reset their melatonin cycles by almost 2 full hours. Their bodies begin making melatonin right at sunset instead of hours later. That's all it takes for 300,000 years of wiring to come roaring back. We didn't merely shift when we sleep. We erased a whole chapter of human consciousness. That quiet, reflective state between first and second sleep, the one Vare's subjects called peaceful and meditative, no longer exists for most of us. What we have instead is insomnia, and we label it a disorder. But what if it isn't a disorder at all? What if waking at 2 a.m. and lying there in the dark isn't a glitch in your body? What if it's your body recalling exactly what it was made to do? For 300,000 years, your ancestors passed their nights in a rhythm that science is only now starting to grasp. They circled fires and told the stories that grew into civilizations. They slept in 2 parts with a pocket of quiet reflection between them. They lived in a darkness so total that the Milky Way wasn't a thing you drove to a national park to glimpse. It was simply the sky. And each night, when they woke in the dark between first and second sleep, they lay there in silence and thought about their lives, their hopes, and the morning they'd rise into. We handed all of that over for a light switch, and most of us never even realized it was gone.